So for those of you who have attended a real summit, you know what's going to come now. We talk about the new functionality that we put into the last 2 releases or so. If you want to know all the details, you would go to the changelog, you would find a lot of information. You would see there are in total 15 new node extensions. Hi Mark, it's not your time yet. 15 new node extensions, a bunch of new enhancements. If you want to go through all of these in detail, it's way too much. You can still do this. Go to our web page, find the What's New pages, and you'll find links to more material, examples, etc. So what we want to do here instead is to focus on some highlights, and instead of just me talking through this, I will involve some people from the development team and quickly introduce them. I will also try to quickly motivate what we are trying to building here, so all of them are contributing to the same solution or to the same workflow that we are building. The simple version looks roughly like this. Most of us will know what's going to happen here. So we read some data, do some data munging, some data preparation, splitting the data, and then learning a predictive model, in this case a binary classifier. And then we also have some predictor prediction part at the bottom of the workflow. But those are details that we'll cover later. This workflow will look slightly more complicated in the end, but don't be frightened. We're going to explain at least the important parts in here. And if this is too KNIME-ish, too workflow heavy, there's also going to be what we call a data app, so a visual representation of this workflow that then, for instance, business users could interact with and use. We try to map this also into the data science lifecycle that Michael mentioned, where on the left-hand side you have the data creation part that is mostly using KNIME Analytics platform to build one of these workflows, and then the deployment or production part where you can, for instance, use KNIME Server, and then there's also the glue in the middle, but we'll focus on this in a second. And with that, I want to focus on the analytics platform for now, and like to introduce Mark in our Berlin office. Mark is core developer at KNIME, and he can speak briefly about new connectors, data reading, and also data preprocessing. Hi, Mark. Finally, now for real.
Yeah. Now it's my turn. So thanks a lot for the introduction and warm greetings from the Berlin office. Let me quickly walk you through the simple workflow that Bernd just showed. So we start off by reading data in from various sources. Then we do some custom data preparation using various of your basic KNIME nodes. Then we do some partitioning, and then we do some normalization using Python script nodes, and finally we learn a binary classifier, say a random forest. But first things first, let's have a look at the new data sources and the new connectors that this KNIME release brought. So first I want to bring your attention to the SMB connector node, which lets you connect to your Windows file server or your Samba server. In my case, I'm on Windows, so I can just connect to my local Windows file server and then read data in using any file handling node, like for instance the Excel reader. Now this SMB connector node also supports Kerberos authentication, which I think is super cool. And it has this file system connection port, which nowadays many of our connector nodes have. So I think all of these connectors here do this. And you can just plug these into any of your file handling nodes, which is super handy. There's also this new connector, the Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 connector, which has also been introduced in this release and which has been requested heavily. That's why I'm bringing it up here. And speaking of these file handling nodes, of which most of our readers now support this file handling port, they have been given a data transformation tab, which you can see here, and which basically allows you to set the type of any column or transform the type of any column. So this H column here, I can just transform to a string instead of an integer, and then it will be a string, which saves me this number to string node right here. So I can just go like this. Yes, so much about the connector nodes. There's also this whole connector paradigm has been landed from our database or DB connectors. So there are many DB connectors, and one new DB connector that has been introduced in this release is the Snowflake connector, which lets you connect to your Snowflake's cloud data platform. And then you can basically make use of Snowflake's high scalability and inherent elasticity, and just connect to your Snowflake's cloud data platform and then do all your data transformation if you want. Using the KNIME's DB nodes, you can do then this data transformation in Snowflake, like the DB joiner, for instance, you can use, and everything will happen on Snowflake. But I mean, if you prefer, you can also load the data into KNIME using the DB reader, for instance, and then use your tried and tested KNIME nodes, like the joiner, like the KNIME joiner. Speaking of the KNIME joiner, this joiner has just received a major overhaul and has left the lab state. So this is a new joiner node, which replaces the old joiner, and it has boosted performance or just a superior performance over the old joiner.
Mark, can you talk a bit about what exactly that means in terms of performance and
yes,
maybe also a bit technical if Anna allows?
So basically it's two things. First off, the data structures, the temporary data structure that this joiner node builds up when doing the join is a bit more intelligent and less wasteful with resources. And secondly, when memory becomes low, which can quickly happen when joining large data tables, then this joiner has a more clever fallback strategy. So that's basically it.
Okay.
But the whole performance topic isn't the only thing this new joiner brings. It also brings some additional options that have been requested quite often. For instance, the option to route unmatched rows to separate ports. So when I activate this, then unmatched rows will just be routed to different ports, which is another of several options that this joiner has been given in this release. So this joiner has moved the lab state, and this is a general motive or paradigm in this release. Many nodes have left the lab state, and I want to bring your attention also to the MongoDB nodes, which have received a lot of love and a major overhaul in this release, and which now also follow this connector pattern. So if you want, you can check them out. I highly encourage you to do so. They have really been overhauled, and we've put a lot of work into those in this release.
Yeah, that's we see with many different integrations that you always have these connect and then do something, and these connector node is then used in multiple different nodes.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And now I quickly touched upon the whole performance issue. And if you recall, performance was also a major topic in the last KNIME release, 4.3 release, when we introduced the new columnar table backend. And I quickly want to remind you how this works. So it's basically a complete rewrite of the whole data structure and data handling that KNIME does in the background. You can activate it on a per workflow level by just selecting your workflow in here, right-clicking it, pressing configure, and then selecting table backend, setting it to columnar storage labs. And as the name indicates, this is still in the lab state. So proceed with caution. Also gives you this red warning. But if you do proceed, then you should notice a general or a speed up in your average KNIME node.
Yeah. People might know this has already been released in December. So can you quickly comment on what we changed in this release with regard to the columnar storage?
Yes. So really what has changed this time is things in the background that you won't notice at first. One thing is that we now do compression on files that are persisted to disk. So the overall load on your hard disk should be reduced a little bit, or the storage that is taken up by this backend. And also we added support for memory map files, which is very technical, but also super cool, and which really paves the way for cool developments in the future, like for instance having shared memory with Python nodes, which we plan for some time in the future. And speaking of Python nodes, I also want to bring your attention to a really, really cool new Python-related node, which is the Conda environment propagation node, and which really does as the name suggests. So if I click on it, it lets me select a Conda environment on my machine, for instance this one or this one, and then I can select or unselect certain packages and I can apply, and then this Conda environment that I just configured here will be propagated to downstream nodes that can make use of such a Conda environment. And such downstream nodes would be, for instance, a Python script node or a rsnippet node. And then, for instance, in this Python script node, I can now select to use this Conda environment right here, which is propagated via a flow variable. And then this Python script node or rsnippet node will just run in that Conda environment and make use of that Conda environment. And I mean, this is really a huge step in terms of workflow interoperability, because what's super cool about this is that you can just package or configure your environment, then load this workflow on the server. And even if this Conda environment isn't present on the server, it will just install all the packages and basically reconfigure this whole environment, and your workflow will run as it would on your local machine where you set it up. So I think that's a super cool thing.
I see many customers doing that as well currently. It's very useful.
Yeah. And it's not only used for deployment on server, etc., but it's also if you take that workflow and also make it available, let's say old style email, or you put it on KNIME Hub, then it has that environment definition embedded. Yeah.
Yep.
And also here in this workflow, we nicely see, I mean, there are all these nodes, there are native KNIME nodes partitioning in Python script, and it seamlessly fits in. People don't notice there is data copying happening because somehow the data needs to get from KNIME into Python, and thanks for the pointer on the memory map files, and this is an active area of where we are working on. Yeah.
But that's really all I had for today. So if you want to know more about these new nodes that have made it into this analytics platform release, just visit us at the analytics platform booth later. And is there anything else to mention, Bernd?
No, I think this is
perfect.
Good.
I think that was great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so what we have seen here now is that workflow, getting the data in and pre-processing it. You also saw it's going into this tree ensemble based on XGBoost, etc. You will also notice there is the predictor nodes at the bottom, and everyone who's doing real data science say, that looks a bit fishy. And this is now where we go slightly into the right-hand side of the data science lifecycle, because now we have to extract this predictor and put this into production. And for that, we've introduced integrated deployment, and we did that already last year, but this extension has now also received some further maintenance and development, also some new features, and I'd like to introduce Martin based here in Konstanz. He's a developer contributing to this particular project, among others. And Martin, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Bernd. Hi, Anna.
Hi.
We first introduced this extension, the integrated deployment extensions, a year ago. But when we published it first, we published it as a KNIME Labs extension, so it used to be in here. But now with the newest release, we finally moved it out of Labs, and you'll find the integrated deployment extension now here in the workflow abstraction category. And while doing this, we did a bit of polishing, but most importantly, we added 2 new nodes, which makes the extension even more powerful. But before we peek into the 2 new nodes, I'd like to first recap what the integrated deployment extension is actually all about, because I think it's quite an exciting extension. And it solves one major problem we had before, which is kind of the gap between workflow creation and moving workflows into production. So if we have a look at the workflow Mark just introduced, at some point in time, you want to put this workflow into real use. So deploy parts of it somewhere else. In this case, we might want to extract a prediction workflow out of it. Before integrated deployment, we would have needed to copy parts of the workflow manually to another workflow and do even some more stuff. But with integrated deployment, it gets way easier, because with the integrated deployment nodes, we can now simply capture parts of the workflow we want to move into production, for instance, by surrounding them with the capture workflow start and capture workflow end. Here, for instance, we are capturing the pre-processing part of this workflow, including the new conda environment propagation node. And then further downstream, we're also capturing the feature transformation. In this case, it's a feature normalization, which is carried out by this Python scripting node. And we also capture the predictor node itself. And also please notice that those nodes here use, in order to do the operation, for instance, the prediction or the feature transformation, they use all other ports, other objects. In this case, it's a piggled Python object which is used here to carry out the feature transformation itself. And now once we captured those segments, which are two different segments, we combine them into one single workflow, which then allows us, which then can be deployed, for instance, to a KNIME server or to a KNIME Edge, which is something you're going to learn about in a minute. Or what I'm doing right now, I just write the workflow, the newly captured workflow, into my local workspace in order to be able to just look at it and see if it's the workflow I'm expecting. So I execute the workflow writer, and you see here the prediction workflow has been created in here automatically, and this is the workflow we obtain. And just to double check, this is the pre-processing part. Then we have the feature transformation here and the predictor node. And you might also notice these two nodes, and these sort of represent the data which is required, or the models, the normalization model and the classification model, and it's automatically copied in this workflow as well. And you might also notice that there are these nodes, the container input node and container output nodes, which have been added automatically as well. And this allows us, for instance, to deploy this workflow as a web service later on and to put it into production as a web service to be called from other web clients, for instance. And speaking of container input and output nodes, with the new release, as a quick side note, in the new release, we also added a new container input file node and a container output file node, and also improved the container input variable node.
Yeah.
If you want to
talk a bit more about the new stuff, really.
Yes. Thanks for the reminder, Bernd. What we added, the new nodes we are added is the workflow reader. And the workflow reader allows one to read in workflows, obviously, entire workflows. And once they are read in, they are available as such a workflow port object, and then we can again use the integrated deployment nodes or nodes from the integrated deployment extension to work on this. For instance, like the newly added workflow summary extractor. And this workflow summary extractor turns a workflow into a JSON or XML document like this here, and which summarizes, it contains all the information a workflow has, like the nodes, whether a node is deprecated, and so on. And based on this information, you could then do other things like filtering workflows and so on. Or you could just use the components in here as a start, which are available on the hub to get started easier.
Yeah, I can imagine that the average KNIME Analytics platform user won't find this super interesting, this blob of XML or JSON, but I guess
it makes it much easier, right, with other components. And it's great for data lineage as well. I think this makes everything more clear. As
soon as you build complex solutions, and you want to have that because it allows you to automatically extract information from a bunch of different workflows. And all what Martin has shown here also is a simple example. So he creates a single predictor, but you can also envision that you have your workflow in a loop, and it creates several. And
it's really a time-saving solution. It's really interesting. Yeah,
you can have different predictors, different workflows for different production lines, for different categories of whatever you want to process.
Great stuff.
Yeah. Anything else to add, Martin?
One last comment. We have a booth for the integrated deployment as well, if you want to know more about it.
Making advertisement. Yes, there's a booth. Right. Okay, so now we have that prediction workflow, which also gets automatically generated, right? And let's continue in our data science lifecycle. So we now have the learner automatically extracting the score or the predictor workflow. And now we want to take this and really put this into production. And with that,
Scale as well.
Yes, now you start to move into the direction of KNIME Server, and the KNIME Server has also received a couple of new features, and one of those is called KNIME Edge. And we have Simon here. He's also based in Konstanz. Simon is developer contributing to KNIME Server and KNIME Edge. So give us a bit of background and what KNIME Edge is and how it fits in here.
Yeah, thank you, Bernd. Hi, Anna. Before I jump into the demo, let me briefly explain you what KNIME Edge actually is. So KNIME Edge is a new extension that is currently new extension to KNIME Server that is currently being developed, and it will be released later this summer. Mm-hmm. And yeah, KNIME Edge allows you, so helps you productionizing data science. It allows you to deploy workflows that you have created with KNIME as inference services. So it means a service that provides an API endpoint, which means the service can be integrated into any type of applications. And as KNIME Edge builds on Kubernetes, such services are also scalable, they're reliable, and they provide low latency for a high throughput of requests. So let me jump into the demo. So Martin has already explained to you how you can capture such workflow segments with integrated deployment and combine them into a workflow, and that you can use the workflow writer node to write this workflow basically into your local workspace. And there is also this node, which is called deploy workflow to server, and this node actually deploys this workflow directly to KNIME Server. I already executed this node, so you can see in my KNIME Server there's this workflow being deployed. And if I look into this is exactly the same as the one Martin just showed to you. So and this is a typical pattern of such an inference workflow that can be deployed as a service to KNIME Edge. So it always starts with some container input node that defines the input parameters or body of the REST call, and then some pre-processing is done, then some inferencing. In this case, a model is applied to the data, and there could also be some post-processing, and in the end, a container output then provides the response for the REST call. And we can take this workflow as it is and deploy it directly to KNIME Edge, and I already did this beforehand to save some time. So let's look into the Lens, which is a tool that allows us to inspect our Kubernetes cluster. And here we can see that in the Edge namespace there are multiple services deployed, and one is called prediction service, and that's the service I have just deployed. I just named it like that, and we can see that it's active and running. If we, for example, look into the pods, we can see, let me see, here there are currently 2 pods running for the service, but this can be scaled up and down based on the demand, basically. And there's also ingress that is created, so this provides us actually an endpoint that we can use. So let's switch to Postman and do a manual post request via REST to our prediction service. If you see, let's take a look at the body. So we send some numerical data with it that is used to do the predictions. And if we send this request, we quickly get the response back that gives us some prediction. And Postman is just a utility tool to do such manual requests, but you can imagine as this is just a REST call, you can embed this into any kinds of applications. You can imagine a web application or a Python or a Java application and so on. And maybe just as a reminder as well, Bernd, there's also a KNIME Edge feature booth after the session where you can meet me and other KNIME Edge developers to learn more about KNIME Edge.
Great. Simon, can you just, speaking about KNIME Edge and KNIME Server, I talk a lot with customers and they are very used to how the KNIME Server works. Can you just go a little bit on the difference, just be a bit more specific, what people are gaining with the KNIME Edge, for instance?
Yeah, that's a good point, Anna. So both KNIME Server and KNIME Edge support workflows as APIs, but yeah, KNIME Edge really focuses on deploying such inference workflows as inference services that are then highly scalable, they're reliable, durable, and they provide a low latency if there is a high throughput of requests coming in. And also, KNIME Edge provides detailed monitoring of these services, so they fit nicely into your existing MLOps strategy. And also another big benefit of KNIME Edge is that it's detached from KNIME Server, so it can be deployed in geographically distributed areas, for example, in factories where, for example, the bandwidth is low.
Wow, really cool stuff. Can't wait to see this.
Scaling and independence.
Exactly. Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Simon.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I think at this point we make a bit of a stop because now we built a workflow and made everything automated. There is no interaction yet. It's all automated. The workflow gets automatically created, deployed, and then is available as an API. We'd like to move on and involve the user a bit and add some controls and also talk a bit about data apps. And this is where we have some developers somewhere here in the office, and Anna is going to find them, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm going to take everyone with me now to talk to the developers. So let's go.
Okay.
So just a brief overview. About coronavirus, we are being very careful here. We were all tested and we always use masks when we are not recording, if you were wondering. All right, so I'm here with my dear colleagues developers. How are you guys doing?
Good, thanks.
Good, yeah.
Thanks.
So I'm here with Peter, Toby, and Ben, and we are going to go a little bit on what they've been developing for us. So let's start with Ben. Hi, Ben.
Hey, Anna. How's it going?
Pretty good. And you?
Good.
Awesome. So I've seen that we've talked a lot about like building workflows, automatically deploying those workflows, but what I think it's missing is a little bit of the interactivity. And I know that you've been working a lot on making this even nicer with KNIME Server. Can you show us a little bit about it?
Absolutely. So today we've been looking at sort of building and deploying a classification workflow, but let's say that you're interested in deploying this as a web application. So on my screen I have a simple example. Users of KNIME will recognize this is a web portal application deployed on KNIME Server, but this is really useful if you want to include either a business user or a data scientist in the deployment process. So what we have here is a little visualization I've built for the same workflow. But something that we've added new with KNIME, the latest release, is the ability to really interact with your web application in real time. In the past, you sort of had to navigate, you had to build a very complex web application. However, now if we're looking at some sort of interactivity, we're not happy with our model performance, we can sort of modify this and go ahead and retrain in real time.
Cool. So it's all in the same page. You don't need to go anymore.
No more navigation, no more complex, branches. This is actually all one component. So, another cool feature that we've recently added, or one of the things you can do with this, is you can re-execute pieces of the workflow, all at independently in real time. And as you can see here, let's go ahead and adjust our threshold. And using the sort of integrated deployment, we can deploy this workflow, this predictor workflow, directly from this application.
And all on the same page, which I find it amazing. Really cool stuff. But I guess this is very complicated to build.
I think most people will be surprised. On first glance, it might appear kind of complex, but at its core, we have the original workflow with our XGBoost and our workflow capture from integrated deployment. But if we take a look at what's actually changed here, the only thing that I added were these input widgets, which are the visual elements on the page. And specifically something new with this version of KNIME is this refresh button widget. So this is really where the magic happens, because this allows you to identify a specific piece of your workflow that you're interested in sort of re-executing in real time. And all it takes is one widget.
So
and
basically
you're good to
just
go.
one node. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And how can you share this with other people then? Can you execute this from the AP? How?
Yeah. So obviously not everybody has a KNIME server, although they should. But oops, let's see. Oh, yeah. So I think I've been running this a little bit too long. But one of the other things that you can do is you can sort of embed this in any existing website. So as you see here, we have the ability to sort of take the same application or another application without any of the branding and insert it directly into your content. Yeah, I mean, you can do all sorts of cool stuff, swap visualizations, create interactive forms. Yeah.
Really cool. Just another way to share content with people. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ben. That's
Absolutely.
great. Amazing. Speaking of sharing, let's talk now with Toby. Hi, Toby.
Yeah,
how are you
hi,
doing?
Anna. Good. How
Can you talk us a little bit about what is new in the KNIME Hub and since the last releases and how people can share things more easily?
Yeah, sure. So one thing I wanted to show, because Ben was already talking about sharing. So if you want to build these cool workflows and components, the Hub is really a good place to build this together with other people and find solutions which you don't know yet. So I wanted to show a feature which we deployed recently. I'm not sure if you have seen it already, but if I open up my Spaces page, I click on my profile, click on Spaces. Here you can see the spaces I have on the Hub currently. And I'm going to go ahead and open one of these spaces up. So spaces are basically a container for your projects where you can work in. And here you can see I added a description, title, and uploaded a few things. Now, I want Christian to help me with one of these workflows. So instead of going ahead and sending emails back and forth and so on, I can just go ahead and add him here. So I just open this panel, type in his name, and hit add. And there he is, and I click save. And now Christian is added to this project. And if he opens up his analytics platform the next time, he can see this space. He can download the workflow, edit it, and upload it. And so I have his changes right away.
Ah, that's really cool. So you can really add people to contribute to your projects now. It's amazing.
And this is publicly available right now on hub.knime.com for your public spaces. So you can just go ahead and try that out right now.
Ah, that's super cool. So people can just do this right now. It's amazing. But what is coming next for the Hub?
Okay, so for that, I'm going to switch over to my local development environment. So this is not live anymore. This is just locally, so you can't try this out yet. But one thing I wanted to show is new search improvements. So what we added here is if I go in the search and type, for example, Excel Writer or something, then you can see, okay, here's a new window, like an autocomplete window. And you can see some hits there. And I can use the keyboard and navigate there, select one of those, and hit enter.
Less clicks, that's great.
Exactly. So this is really cool for professional users or users who already know the Hub. So they can easily navigate and, less clicks, as you say. And so we are on the page right away. Another cool thing, which we also added to the search, is if I click there again, and for example, type in this, chemistry, then you can see these things on top here. So what is this? I hit enter and select one of those. And then you will jump to the search results. And the search results are now filtered with this keyword. Yeah, so you can go ahead and look through the notes regarding this and the workflows and so on. You can also go ahead and filter this further. So there are suggestions. And and if you open one of these workflows, this is maybe something new you haven't discovered yet. So you can browse a little bit, click around, and see new solutions. And this also works from the workflow pages. So you can, for example, if you see an interesting topic here, you can just click on this and the same thing happens.
That's so cool. So this makes searching on the Hub even easier.
Yeah,
that's really
I
nice.
hope so. And easier to discover and explore, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you want to know more about this, you can meet us later at the booth. So happy to talk about that.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Toby. I can't wait to see this live on the hub.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, now I'm going to go to talk to my colleague Peter. And Peter, can you show us a little bit of what's coming next on KNIME AP? We talked about the hub now, but now I wanted us to you show us a little bit of a sneak peek of what's coming next.
Oh, thanks, Anna. Yeah, I could present you a sneak peek of the KNIME new looks. So what you're seeing here is a design prototype of a new user interface and UX, so to help people getting started with the KNIME Analytics platform better and on an easier way. So let me zoom in to show you some details. So yeah, we will have a more fresh user interface with some changes on the left with the node repository. So
so this is the node repository on the left.
yeah, we changed a bit the UI, so it's not anymore tree-based structure, and we will display the nodes like they will appear in the workflow. So this is one major change, and also the findability will change, that you go over the tags and can find the node that you're looking for your workflow. Yeah, and also what we will do that the users have less clicks and less mouse movements is that we will that we plan to embed on the right side the configuration dialogues.
Oh, that's super cool. But this is all right now a prototype, right?
This is a design prototype with planned features, yes, but I can show you also some development status of
please.
So I need to switch to the KNIME Analytics platform like you know it, and what is possible to see the current development status is you have the switch on the top right, and I present this with a workflow that Mark and Ben shows. So I can click here, switch the user interface, and then it will appear in the new log.
Wow, that's super cool.
So yeah, and in the current status, we have implemented the node output at the bottom.
So everyone can see easily the results of the nodes on the bottom right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So that is one change, and also some major changes how you open components and meta nodes. So you will be also in the same workflow, and you go only deeper. So you see always with the breadcrumb where you can go and can go back. So also some changes is that we have now all possible output and flow variables at the bottom, so you can switch easily from output ports to flow variables.
And I love that when you click on a node, the hidden flow variable ports appear, because this was always something that people asked us as well. So it's nice that you took also feedback from users and customers into consideration.
Yeah, we do collect feedback and designing the UI now on user feedback.
Yeah, awesome. Perfect. Yeah. Is there anything else you would like to show, or are we good?
I think that is a sneak peek of the KNIME new looks, and yeah, if you want to meet me and our colleagues at the feature booth, that will be nice. Then I can show you more.
Awesome. Looking forward to that. Great. Thank you everyone for your time. It was amazing to see what you're working on. And now maybe I move it here, and I want to bring back to Bern in the studio to talk more about what is next on the Community Data Talks.